Hello and welcome to the FPL News channel. This video is a press conference roundup for Fantasy Premier League ahead of the deadline this evening. That's 6:30 p.m. Ireland/UK time. So just over 2 hours from when I'm recording this video, probably a bit less by the time you actually watch it. So we'll go straight in, and for Chelsea, Reece James is going to see a specialist about his knee this weekend, so he's definitely out for Gameweek 11. He's not going to play Gameweek 12 either, and the reports are suggesting that he could even miss the World Cup, which would obviously rule him out of the rest of the block of games before the World Cup. So it's up to Gameweek 16. Potter didn't say anything else, whether he knows more or not. I'm not sure, but yeah, James is definitely out. I'm guessing that the club might put out a statement on Reece James over the weekend, depending on what the specialist says. Potter is also going to get asked about it on Sunday when they play, and he's going to have a pre-match press conference on either Monday or Tuesday ahead of their game midweek against Brentford. So we'll hear more about it again before the Gameweek 12 deadline, but there's no conceivable way he's going to play in 12 and realistically 13 as well. And after that, I guess it'll depend on what the prognosis is. But yeah, he is ruled out, Reece James. N'Golo Kante is also going to see a consultant about his issue. I think it's hamstring. He's barely been seen, and Potter said it's not good news. So you'd be surprised to see him in action before Gameweek 16. Obviously breaking for the World Cup after Gameweek 16. So I suppose in FPL terms, we're not exactly wondering about whether people will be available after that, because obviously you have the actual World Cup and unlimited transfers and all the rest of it. So any outlook here is just up to that point, I guess. And Wesley Fofana is the same, unlikely to feature before the World Cup. For Fulham, obviously a lot of people, including myself, wondering what the story with Alexander Mitrovic is. He did the warm-up part of team training today, so Silva said that he was involved in team training, and it was the warm-up he did, and then Silva said that the rest of the session was more preparing for the match against Bournemouth. So it sounds like to me that they didn't have a full training session, but what they did have, he was involved in. And then Silva also said the decision will be made later today. He's going to talk to the medical team, talk to the technical staff, like the coaches and whatever. I think it sounds like he's going to make the bench in a best case scenario. I'd be surprised if he started. So obviously there's probably a big risk of a cameo off the bench. It's a pretty difficult decision whether to start him or like Andreas. If that's what you have, that's what I have, and that's what a lot of people obviously have. If they own Mitrovic, because Andreas is so popular. I'd probably risk leaving him in case he comes on and scores. I suppose it's unlikely, because obviously less time on the pitch, less time to score, etc. It's difficult to come on and just get a goal in 20 minutes. If that's what happens. The fact that he only did his first bit of team training today, like a day before the game, I think it's unlikely he'll be involved, to be honest. I guess they might put him on the bench and, like, if they're losing, try and get the 20 minutes out of him. It's like a lot of things, I suppose, in FPL. Like a lot depends on game state and things that are completely out of our control once the deadline's gone. So I guess there's definitely the risk of a cameo. But they've also got another 2 games within this week, as the managers say. It's a 3-game week, with the midweek games. So yeah, you'd sort of think that, like, if he was training on a Friday, and that if they were able to get him training Sunday and Monday, that maybe he'd actually have a chance of starting the midweek game. Whereas I think it's quite obvious they'd be risking him to a degree if they try to use him tomorrow. So I kind of think he's not going to get any minutes, but it's definitely possible that he does get some. I think a start is probably out of the question. I could be wrong about that, but I'd be very surprised if he started. So yeah, that's Mitrovic. Difficult one, pain in the neck for owners. Again, yeah, they're playing again midweek, so Silva will have another press conference before Gameweek 12. Oh, actually, they play on Thursday. So his press conference is probably going to be on the Wednesday, which is post-deadline. Very helpful. Yeah. That's a slight conundrum. He'll likely get asked about him anyway over the course of the weekend, or like on Saturday, before or after the game or whatever. But yes, there is a chance that Silva will talk on Wednesday, which is post deadline. Yeah, I think in FPL terms, if I was looking for my own situation, I've got a ton of flags, so I'm probably going to keep him. But I could absolutely see why you would sell Mitrovic if you had no other issues, and obviously going to have one free transfer anyway. Yeah, it's a pretty painful on at the moment. And yeah, if I had just the Mitrovic flag and not 2 or 3 others, I would sell him. But I suppose on the bright side for owners, and you need players in Gameweek 12, he's got at least a chance of playing, depending on the next few days. So yeah, it's not great news, but yeah, it depends what your bench is like and what other issues you've got. So Arsenal played last night in the Europa League. Friday deadlines are always terrible for this kind of thing, but the likelihood is that Arteta did his, pre-Leeds press conference yesterday on Thursday at some stage in the evening, but nothing has come out yet because it is probably embargoed, and because they're not playing till Sunday, the embargo could be tomorrow, it could be later tonight, which is fairly annoying. The thing with Arteta is that he's absolutely giving up no information whatsoever at the moment. It's just oddness, in my opinion, and yeah, more questions need to be asked of him, but at the moment he doesn't want to say anything, and he's being allowed to kind of go with that. So he didn't say anything about Jesus on Wednesday. Didn't say anything about Zinchenko. Zinchenko wasn't in the squad, so he's a big doubt. And they left Jesus at home, but there was no mention of why. You'd guess it was because he took a knock to the head last weekend, and like reports say he should be fine. So you'd expect him to play, and you'd expect Zinchenko not to feature. But yeah, I suppose keep an eye out for Arsenal news, but the likelihood is that it's going to be post-deadline anyway. And I suppose there's a strong likelihood that there won't be any news because Arteta won't say anything. So that's the situation with Arsenal. So Spurs, Kulusevski's out. He's going for another scan today. Conte was a bit more positive about him post Champions League, but something's after happening since in training, I think. So he's going for another MRI today. So he's definitely out for the weekend. And Conte is just saying that he doesn't want to take risks with him and stuff like that. So you'd be very surprised if he turns up in game week 12 or 13, to be honest. After that, very hard to say. It doesn't sound like it's overly serious either, but yeah, like during the week it sounded like that he was going to be back, and in my opinion it was going to be from the bench, and then obviously something has happened since. So yeah, Kulusevski, when he does return, I'd imagine it'll be like limited minutes at the start, just because the way Conte is speaking about it. And that's what generally happens anyway, I suppose. If players are out with injury for a while, tend to get eased back in. I suppose it's very situation and club dependent, but and then Conte said otherwise that he's the same players available as midweek. So that means that Richarlison should be available. He had some sort of knee issue after the Champions League game, but Conte wasn't asked specifically about him, and he said he's the same players available, so he should be an option. The Italian also mentioned that when he's speaking about rotation, that Harry Kane and Eric Dyer, he singled them out along with Højbjerg and Bentancur, the two midfielders. He singled those four players out as ones that will basically start every game. So good news if you want Kane, or you're thinking about Eric Dyer as a replacement for one of the injured defenders. And then he also got asked who's going to start right wing back. He spoke positively about Matt Doherty, saying that he did well against Brighton. He also referenced the fact that Doherty was struggling at the start of the season, but he spoke in good terms about him regarding his start last weekend. And Emerson Royal is still suspended. He's out until game week 13 in the Premier League. And Royal obviously played midweek in the Champions League. So to me, Conte makes it sound like Doherty's going to start. He kind of mentioned Spence as well, and that like he's getting more of an idea of what it means to play for Spurs or whatever. Makes it sound like he's not going to play, or definitely not start, I'd say, in my opinion. And he obviously did try the Perisic at right wing back thing against Leicester. That didn't end up going very well. So you'd be sort of surprised if he played there. And I suppose Lucas Moore is possibly an option. It was more like he got used there at the very odd time. It's more so been talked about by Conte that he could play there previously, but he's only just back from injury as well. So I'd be very, very surprised if he played there. So Doherty looks like a good bet to play against Everton. He's another interesting potential replacement for players such as James and Alexander-Arnold that are out. But like nobody's going to be able to give you a guarantee on Doherty's minutes past this weekend. Even a guarantee for this weekend is strong. It seems like there's a good chance he'll start this weekend. Very hard to say then for midweek. The only thing going in his favour is that Emerson Royal isn't available because of suspension. And then from game week 13 on, it's anybody's guess. His expected minutes look somewhat decent for the next two games. But there are definitely safer picks out there as well. Okay, on to Liverpool. Klopp didn't give any team news, which is nice of him. Trent is out. Diaz is out, and Matip's going to be out. Those are all known issues already. And then Andy Robertson is in contention because he made his return from the bench in the Champions League midweek. But yeah, nothing new from Klopp. He just didn't say anything. There's a possibility there's news comes out in the embargo either tonight or on Saturday night. And he was obviously asked about Salah because of the hat-trick in midweek, and he said that he thinks that Salah operating more centrally wasn't a huge factor in the hat-trick. So yeah, I suppose see where Salah plays or kind of operates this weekend before deciding whether you want him in Game Week 12 or not in the blank Game Week. Obviously no Haaland for captain, so Salah is at least a tempting option, even though his form hasn't been of use to FPL players so far, but he's going to be very tempting if he is used differently. Yeah, it's very much dependent on what happens this weekend, I think. I mean, Rangers isn't a good barometer, but Man City should be. But there's plenty of time to decide. You can obviously watch the Liverpool Man City game, see if Salah's more in the box, getting shots, etc. And see what Klopp says, if he says anything about team news and stuff before the Tuesday deadline for Game Week 12. So for Man City, Walker, Stones and Phillips are all out. Stones could return the next couple of weeks. There was no timeline given for the other two, so it doesn't sound like they're back anytime soon. And obviously there's not that long left till the World Cup now, about a month. And then Guardiola was asked specifically about Haaland, Bernardo Silva and Foden, because they were players that he had mentioned that were tired following Game Week 10, and he just said they're all ready. So no surprises there. Haaland, Bernardo Silva, Foden, all good to go for Game Week 11. On to Newcastle. Alexander Isak remains out and he's unlikely to feature over the next 3 games, which are over the course of the next 7 or 8 days. John Joe Shelby's getting closer to a return to full training, so he's going to be another while. And St. Maximin is in contention to start. He's obviously already back. Got minutes off the bench last weekend, so he's in contention to start. But Howe also reserved praise for Almiron and Murphy. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see who he picks. Almiron looks like a lock at the moment. Whether or not St. Maximin comes straight back in for Murphy, or it takes a little bit of time for him to get his start. We'll see. For West Ham, Mikel Antonio was down with the flu, missed the game yesterday. Moy said he's a little bit better. So, considering that Scamacca only got minutes from the bench yesterday, it looks like Scamacca will start. Antonio may or may not be on the bench. Overall, probably good if you own or are buying Scamacca, because they don't have another striker besides Antonio. Now they can play false nines and all that kind of thing, but in the short term, yeah, decent for Scamacca's expected minutes. Kurt Zouma has the sniffles. Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. He missed out. Thilo Kehrer missed out as well. They both missed out yesterday in the Conference League. Kehrer has a knock. It'd be no surprise if they both started, but that's why they're flagged on FPL. Yeah, who's to know? like, in fairness to Moyes, he doesn't usually give that much up, but he actually had no updates to give this morning because it was so close to the end of the game they played on Thursday night. So he probably didn't actually even know whether those lads be ready or not. So, and then same story with Craig Dawson. He came on last night, but had come off with a dead leg, which was a problem he'd been carrying anyway. So he's another doubt for Sunday, and Maxwell Cornet's out. For Manchester United, Ten Hag did his pre-match press on Thursday. That was held after their Europa League game, and in that he said Martial could be fit and that they'd have to see. So obviously he wasn't actually speaking today, so just depends if Martial is pictured and stuff. I can't imagine too many own him in FPL. And I wouldn't be investing right now because he's, a doubt. But if you do own him and you're holding him, there's a chance he could get some minutes. Be very surprised if he started, even if he is in the squad. Harry Maguire's out, and likely the same for Wan-Bissaka and Van de Beek, who both missed out in a week and have been out for a while. They weren't specifically mentioned, but Maguire was. For Leeds, Junior Firpo was available, but Jesse Marsh said that Pascal Struijk will continue left back. He said that Bamford is getting closer to being 100%. It sounds like his minutes will continue to be managed, and yeah, it's just not someone I'd invest in at the moment just because of the fitness issues. I suppose there's probably other strikers you'd want at the moment as well, but just specifically on Bamford, there's tons of quotes from Marsh today, some of which I've tweeted out and others which I just didn't have time to. But basically they're going to have to be very careful with him the whole time. So like in a week where they're playing 3 games, his minutes are going to be managed. And then there was also some interesting quotes where he was asked about basically who would miss out in attack, which he didn't give a straight answer to, which is fair enough. He's not going to tell you the team or whatever exactly. But I think the most interesting part was that he noted Crescencio Somerville, who's 4.4 million FPL. He noted him as a player who deserves more minutes basically than he wants to give more minutes to. So it's just one for the watch list, I guess, because he's so cheap. If he somehow managed to nail down a spot in attack, it'll obviously be really difficult considering the players he's up against. But it sounds like he's going to get a lot of sub appearances anyway, and who knows what happens after that. I just thought that was interesting. For Aston Villa, Leon Bailey returned to training yesterday. That's Thursday. There's a decision to be made on his involvement, whether or not he'll be, risked from the start or not again. A lot of matches coming up, and he's a player who's had his issues in the past with injuries and availability, stuff like that. So, he's another player in that bracket of is very risky from a minutes perspective. Now he's obviously very cheap too, so it's kind of built into the price there. But yeah, they're gonna have to be careful with him too. Matty Cash didn't train on Thursday, but Jared said he should be fine. They're just managing him back from his injury. Obviously he returned last weekend, returned to the team as opposed to got FPL points. But yeah, they're just being careful with him, but you'd expect him to start. And he also mentioned that Cameron Archer is available, but has some sort of issue that needs to be dealt with. Presumably that will happen when the World Cup is on. For Wolves, Costa's minutes are going to continue to be managed, and Raul Jimenez is out. No timeline on Jimenez. Doesn't sound like he'll be back anytime soon. So it sounds like Costa will start again, but yeah, they're treading carefully with him. think they didn't even expect him to play as many minutes as he did at the last weekend against Chelsea. I think it was almost 60. I'm not sure on the exact number, but it was in and around the 60. They were actually planning on taking him off at half time, but left him on for a small bit more, and it's going to just be like that for him for the next few weeks at least. On to Southampton, Musa Djenepo's out, and Romeo Lavia could return to team training next week. And for Bournemouth, Lloyd Kelly is still out, as is David Brooks. Rothwell and Pearson, two midfield players, are in training. Not clear whether they'll be involved or not. Just more options for Parker in midfield, I guess, whenever they're fully fit. And Crystal Palace, which was the last press conference that was on today, no new injury concerns. Nothing to report from Palace from an FPL point of view. And then from Thursday, we had Everton. Frank Lampard said that Calvert-Lewin isn't training every day, which is sort of in an effort to preserve him for matches or make sure that he's ready for games or whatever. So he's a complete avoid in FPL terms. I suppose Everton striker's probably not that high on your list, but was Mopé is an option, and Calvert-Lewin is going to get some minutes, and he might even start a game here or there, but he's going to be managed very, very carefully. They basically don't want him to get another injury, which is fair enough. It's they're treading extremely carefully with him. Decore is available. Holgate and Mina both still out, and Nathan Patterson is expected back in 2 to 3 weeks. There was photos of him on the grass this week. It's obviously individual work, and it's around the timeline that Lampard gave beforehand. So 2 to 3 weeks for Patterson. For Leicester, late fitness test for Johnny Evans. Castagna has a bruised eye, but he's fine. Roger said that they had a good training week aside from Dennis Pratt and Mendy. So basically no other issues. And Wilfred Ndidi remains out. Brentford, Norgard is still out. It doesn't sound like he'll be back anytime soon. Obviously Frank is getting asked about whether he'll be back for the World Cup. He was saying he will, but it's not going to be rapid anyway. And obviously they're struggling a bit defensively without him. Janssen also remains sidelined. Frank said last week that he was going to play a back four, and they play back five anyway. They obviously play Brighton tonight. So who knows what he's going to do really, because But no Pontus Janssen to come back into either a back 3 or 4, depending on what he decides. Backup keeper Strakosha is sidelined for a couple of weeks, and Keane Lewis Potter is back in contention. For Forest, Moussa Niakate is nowhere close to returning, so it doesn't sound like he'll play before the World Cup. And Jack Holback is struggling. He's basically not match fit, which is why he hasn't really been seen. And finally, Brighton have no new issues. So that's all 20 clubs covered in sort of quick roundup. Hopefully it'll be of use. I think it contains everything you kind of need to know from a team news perspective. Ahead of the deadline, as we say, it's 6:30 this evening, so very soon, or already past, depending on when you've watched. Friday deadline, absolute pain in the neck for anyone doing stuff like this, and for everybody basically. Nobody likes Friday deadlines. They should scrap them. I'll put links to my Twitter threads below. They have the full quotes from Thursday and Friday. And hopefully I will be able to record another video on Tuesday before the Gameweek 12 deadline. Cheers.